Have you ever felt different from others? As if your way of seeing the world didn't fit anywhere? This is the story of a boy who was born fragile on an island of warriors. A boy who had every reason to be rejected, but who ended up becoming a legend. This is a story of Hiccup and also of Toothless, two completely opposite beings who, together, changed the destiny of Vikings and dragons forever. On the island of Bert, dragons were seen as monsters, deadly enemies that destroyed crops and stole livestock. The entire village was built to fight these creatures. But Hiccup, the son of Chief Stoick, was different. He didn't want to kill dragons. He wanted to understand them. And that changed everything. During a nighttime attack, Hiccup accidentally shoots a night fury, a legendary species that no one had ever captured. The dragon falls, but Hiccup can't bring himself to kill it. On the contrary, he approaches for the first time, looks a dragon in the eyes without fear. He sets it free, and an unlikely friendship is born, one that would change everything. Hiccup names the dragon Toothless, and by observing his behavior, he realizes something no one else wanted to see. Dragons weren't evil by nature. They were just afraid. They were hunted, wounded, used, and this whole war was based on fear and ignorance. While the village trained the young to kill, Hiccup trained with Toothless in secret. He learned to fly, to trust, to listen, and when the truth finally comes out, he has to prove to everyone that the coexistence between Vikings and dragons was not only possible, it was necessary. In the first major confrontation, Hiccup faces the real enemy, a colossal dragon, controlled by fear and blind obedience. It is then that he, alongside Toothless, shows everyone that courage is not about killing, it's about protecting. Even if that costs something personal, Hiccup loses a part of himself, literally, but gains something far greater, the trust of his people, and the beginning of a new world. Years pass, and in the second film, we see a transformed Berk. Dragons and humans live in peace, fly together, share the island, but peace never lasts forever. A new enemy arises, Drago Bludvist, a tyrant who uses dragons as weapons. And to face him, Hiccup must mature. He must discover who he is and what it means to be a leader. At that moment, Hiccup reunites with his mother, Valka, a woman who also believed in the coexistence between species, but was forced into exile. The family is reunited, but the danger grows. Drago controls an alpha, a gigantic dragon that dominates all the others with its roar, including Toothless in one of the most painful scenes of the trilogy. Stoick Hiccup's father dies trying to protect his son, and the cruelest blow, he is killed by Toothless, who is being controlled by Drago's alpha. Hiccup loses his father. He loses trust in the dragon he loved most, and almost loses himself. But even in the depths of grief, Hiccup understands it's not Toothless's fault. He is not a monster. He is a friend, a brother, and he needs to be freed. With courage and intelligence, Hiccup faces the alpha, frees Toothless, and together they defeat Drago. Toothless becomes the new alpha, and Hiccup, now fatherless, becomes the new chief, a young man who went from rejected to leader, and who would guide Berk into a new era. But the real goodbye was still to come. In the third film, How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, Hiccup is now the leader of a Berk overflowing with dragons. But with abundance comes greed. Then appears Grimmel, a cruel hunter of night fury, a strategic genius, cold and calculating, who has already exterminated almost every one of Toothless's kind. Hiccup believes the only solution is to find the legendary Hidden World, a mythical place where dragons can live in peace, far from humans. Meanwhile, Toothless meets a new figure, the Light Fury, a mysterious, agile, wild, and free female. The conflict is no longer just external, it's internal. Hiccup begins to realize that maybe he needs to let Toothless go, that the bond between them is strong, but that true love is the one that knows how to let go. After an intense final battle against Grimmel, Hiccup saves the dragons, but he makes the hardest decision of his life. He lets them all go to the Hidden World, including Toothless. They part ways, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom, because now the dragons are safe, and Hiccup has grown. He became everything they once doubted he could be. Years later, he returns with Astrid and their children, and he meets Toothless again, not as an owner, but as an equal. They look at each other, they smile, they fly together one last time, because this story isn't about dragons. It's about courage, friendship, and transformation, about how a fragile boy and a wounded dragon prove to the world that no one is born to fight, that respect is stronger than fear, and that sometimes, to move forward, you have to let go. Hiccup and Toothless, two names that once meant nothing, but over the years, they became symbols of something rare and profound. True friendship, not the easy, instant kind, but the kind that is born from fear, from difference, from doubt, the kind that is tested by time, torn by pain, challenged by life, and still it endures. When Hiccup let go of the reins, he didn't lose Toothless, he freed him. And when Toothless flew into the unknown with the light fury, he didn't abandon Hiccup. He honored him, because in the end, the bond between them was built on something that neither time, nor distance, nor absence could erase. Trust. That's why their reunion years later needs no words, just glances, a gesture, a slow, careful, respectful approach, as if they both know they now belong to different worlds, but they still recognize each other. They still remember. They still love. Hiccup's children approach with curiosity. They look at Toothless with innocent eyes, without fear, without prejudice, just like their father once did. And when Toothless and Delight Fury show their own hatchlings, it's as if the cycle is complete. As if the world is saying, they didn't disappear. They just went ahead. This trilogy isn't just animation. It's not just a fantasy filled with dragons, flights, and battles. It's a mirror of how we grow, of how, sometimes, you need to lose to understand, of how love isn't possession, but presence, of how, even with scars, we can learn to fly again. Hiccup started as a boy desperate to prove his worth to his father, a boy who tried to be someone he wasn't. And it was exactly when he embraced his difference that he found his strength. It was when he said, "I don't want to kill," that he began to lead. It was when he chose to protect instead of dominate that he changed the destiny of the entire island. And Toothless, oh Toothless, a silent, frightened, distrustful dragon who had never known affection, who had always been seen as a weapon, a threat, a beast, until someone saw him, until someone came close, asking for nothing in return. And he responded, not with words, but with presence, with flight, with trust, with love. That's how great bonds begin. Not through force, but through listening. Not through superiority, but through empathy. Not through power, but through shared vulnerability. That's why when we look at this story, what stays with us isn't just the dragons. It's the silences, the gestures. That moment when Hiccup reaches out his hand and Toothless hesitates, but then steps forward, leans his head in, and everything changes. That is the power of a bond. A bond that doesn't demand, but invites. That doesn't trap, but welcomes. That doesn't charge, but understands. And maybe that's why this story touches so many, because deep down, we all want that. Someone who sees us beyond our flaws. Someone who stays, even after seeing our wounds. Hiccup's journey is also the journey of anyone who has ever felt out of place, who's ever been called weak, strange, different, who's ever been forced into molds that didn't fit, who's ever been afraid to disappoint those they love, who's ever lost, who's ever had to grow up too soon, who's ever had to say goodbye. And in that process, he discovers that leadership is not about command, it's about care. That being strong is not about imposing, it's about supporting. That growing up is not about hardening, it's about understanding. That being a chief is not about shouting louder, it's about listening deeper. That being a son is not about copying the father, it's about honoring who he was and transforming what he left behind. And Hiccup does exactly that. He honors Stoick, even while being different. He becomes a leader, even without following the traditional path. He protects dragons, even when the world wants to hunt them. He builds bridges where there were once only walls, and in the end, he understands to love is also to let go. The final scene, with the two friends in different boats looking at the same horizon, is the perfect metaphor for life. Each follows their own path. Each builds their own nest. But the memory, flies with you. And maybe that's why this story never gets old. Because it speaks to children, teenagers, adults, and elders. Because it teaches us that the most important thing isn't the size of your wings. It's what you do once you've learned to fly. And if you've made it this far, maybe you've felt this too. Maybe you've had your own toothless someone who appeared in your life unexpectedly, challenged you, changed you, made you grow. Someone who walked beside you in silence, who supported you even when the world turned its back on you. Someone who left, but still lives within you. And if you haven't found him yet, that's okay. Sometimes the flight begins when we least expect it. Sometimes you need to fall, to get hurt, to lose a part of yourself. to discover that real strength lies in moving forward, with or without dragons, but never alone.